Hello and welcome back. I just realized I haven't got my light on yet. So let's just make sure I have that on. There we go. So, welcome back. Today we are picking back up on Threadit, which I'm really looking forward to actually because it's fun. It's taking me back to APIs, the things that I enjoy the most. So, the idea is that it's an API only social network based around threads, users, replies, reacting to threads, and following people. Usual sort of social stuff, but at a trimmed down level. But there's no media uploads, there's no complicated stuff going on. It's just good old text based content, and that's it. Maybe it will support Markdown. So we've got threads. You can get threads. All is good. This is a test. This is a test. Blah blah blah. And I did start doing it in a modular approach, and well, that's good. I don't think it's quite what I want. I want to go kind of more DDD. I think it fits the structure of what I'm trying to achieve a bit better because there's going to be some really good opportunities for event sourcing and a little bit of event driven too. So I wanted to take this kind of stream just to look at refactoring to domain driven design in my way. I'm not going to use any packages or anything like that to do it. I'm just going to dive in and get it done. What I like to do is let's just make sure that I've not committed from anywhere else. We can do a quick composer bump and a composer update. That should be good. Some good stuff going on. And there we go. Let's just clear the config. Oh, watching from Bangladesh. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Let's make sure that is still working. Fantastic. We are getting somewhere. I'm going to call that dev, and we're just going to compose a dev over here. That will run, do its business. Excellent, excellent. Thread was created, passing a thread. Cool. So when it comes to domain-driven design, the way that I like to, I don't store everything in here because there's a very kind of a common way just to go, let's create a new directory in here, and we're going to call that domains. Yeah, that to me is, it doesn't make sense, right? Your domains are meant to be encapsulated. Why is it in that app namespace? So let's get rid of that. And instead, we are going to come down to our composer JSON, and we're going to register a new namespace down here. Here we go. So we are going to have Threadit _source. That's it. That's all we need. Create that directory. Then we can compose, dump the autoloader, and that will do its business. So that inside here, we're going to have Threadit, and then we're going to have domains within here. So here's our domains, and this is where the business logic-y side of things are going to be. So the way that I've split this out, I need to move it back. Let's be honest. So we can say, let's add our models back here. So we can come to identity, models. Let's just move that back into there. That's going to refactor things for us. Fantastic. We can now delete that. Inside posting models, we can grab this thread and we can move that over there as well, because that's application stuff, right? Here's some jobs. So let's grab this job and let's move that into there. What else have we got? Let's move that. We got events. So we'll go and create an events directory, new events. Come over to here. Thread was created. And this will eventually get moved over somewhere a little bit later on. So that events can now go. let's go create that observers. So new directory. And this is kind of testament to the power of something like PHP Storm, which you don't get in VS Code or any of the others. There's that. Enums, I'm just going to move that to top level for now. App enums, perfect. Identity. So next up, we need directory for HTTP, and then controllers need to go in there. And then this can also go in there. Close all of those. Resources, done. Resources, done. Requests, and requests. So now this modules directory can be deleted. So then inside shared, we've got resources here, which can be moved into there, and then providers, which can be moved to that top level. So there we go. We are now technically back at default Laravel at this point. So close all of those off. That works. Hey, app models not found. So where is that coming from? We are looking for app modules identity. So in API auth. So let's remove that, and we're just going to stick to that one for now. Let's go back and in threads 2, let's just drop that one. And this will be tidied up at a later date. There we go. That's all been imported. Still struggling to find that user. I don't know whether that's a config thing. Let's config clear and let's see what it does. No. So here it is in the log. Where is it coming from? The database seeder. Models user. Let's look for user class. That's all clear in there. That's all clear in there too. Cool. Let's just update it and leave it at that. So let's go ahead and log in. Update our token. Get the authenticated user. All good. Can we get all threads? Yep. Which means we can also create a thread. Cool. So we are back to where we want to be. Close all of that off. So inside of our domains, we've got a few different things. And I'm going to open up the README and we're going to walk through it. I'm going to put on some background music. If it's too loud, do let me know. It shouldn't be. We are going to go for something lo-fi. Okay. So, it works, but it's kind of a bit of an anti-pattern to Laravel, in my opinion. There are better approaches, but this does make sense. And I think I'm going to follow DDD in a loose sense of the term, not in a strict sense of the term. So down in my domains, first thing I need to do is create the domain directory. So we're going to have identity. There you go. There's that identity. That's anything to do with authentication and identifying a user in some way. Next to that, we're going to have threads and replies. So that's all under posting. Really, you're posting something at that point. And then community is about following and that sort of stuff. So there we go. We got our main domains at this point. And what we want from here is, usually I'd put service providers in each one and go from there, but we're going to kind of work up to it, I think. I think that's going to be the most sensible approach. Now, all of our controllers, let's just create an auth controller, and let's just move them into there. And go check our routes and make sure everything is all good. Auth login, cool. Routes are good. Architecture reviewing. Yes, I am, Chris. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We are architecture reviewing today. And what I think I need to do here is start building out some business logic. Like threads over here, this store controller. This is not how I would typically do it. So what I want to do is maybe start at this point and start working through it, I guess. So identity, I'll come back to identity because there's going to be like RBAC stuff going on. But posting, we're going to have things like data objects and value objects and events and that, you know. So we can put our data objects in there. And what I like to do is just make sure that I'm copying these things across because I know I'm going to need them and I want consistent naming. So what we will do, we will go and create a new thread. And what a thread has, if you look at the store request, it's literally just a body. So within here, we can say public function construct. And what I would do, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Here we go. We will have a public read-only string body. That is literally all a new thread needs. So then this store request can go ahead and say, you just get that payload from it, and we're going to return a new domain thread. There we go. So we can return a new thread where the body is this string body to string. So that over here, this uses create. This eventually is just going to be a little bit different. So do we go service or action or command and query? I'm kind of tempted to commands and queries on this one. So I would go commands, like that. And then we're also going to want events over here too. But these are going to be like domain events. So commands, which is basically like the action class, really. So this command is going to be create new thread. And this create new thread needs a constructor. This constructor is going to have a private read-only database manager as database. Do that. Then on the handle method, public function handle, we are going to pass through that new thread as the payload, and we want to return back a, I don't really want to return back a thread model. I'll figure that bit out. We'll come back and figure this bit out. But our store controller, now what we need to do is, instead of getting the database manager here, we want to get that create new thread command, which means that can go. So our thread is going to be this command handle where the payload is the request payload. And we want this to eventually return something like a model in effect, but we will see. Good morning. What I think we also need to include on this is that public string user. So we're passing through not only just that, but we also want to get the currently authenticated user. This has probably got a constructor that I can't override easily, hasn't it? Extend Symfony request, which has probably got a constructor. Yeah. So what I need to do is on this store request here, we're going to add in a string user so that the user is the user like so. So that when we are generating it, request payload user is this user ID. Like so. So we need to come to here, and this wants to return. For now, we're just going to stick with that, and we'll worry about how this all works. Transaction, and we're going to do a callback where we want to say user query create. No, not user. What am I on about? A thread. I don't know why I was thinking users. You're architecting a next application. Isn't that just signing up to things, all right? So what we're going to have is on this payload here is we're going to have a function called toArray, which is going to return an array, which is going to return how we want it stored in effect. So we're going to have a body of this body and then a user ID for this user like that. So what we can do is we can actually just do a quick array shape and say that we've got a body string and a user ID string. So that over here, we can just say payload to array, and that should all be good. There we go. This could potentially throw an exception. But that's all good. That's all good. That is now working. So let's go and make sure that that's still working, right? Perfect. Probably just created a load of threads that I didn't need to. I should throttle that. Okay, so there is DDD started. We got a command over here, and what we're going to want as well is we're going to want queries. And the way that I like to do these is perhaps a little bit different. So to explain, we'll look at how it currently works. We've got a query builder. And what this is going to do is do a certain something, right? So we, at this point, if we wanted to kind of simplify it, is getting a list of queries, right? We're getting listing queries. So we'll say something like list threads. And we are going to have just a simple handle function at this point. And what we want this to return is actually an eloquent builder. Because we might want to kind of keep it going at this point. So we're going to want to use that. So we want to return query builder for, and let's just go subject. Now, this for, it will take a builder, a relation, or a string. So we can pass through like a builder or a string as the start of the query. And we can just pass that through. And then this can say to or get eloquent builder. There we go. Like so. So this list threads, it can be kind of bootstrapped in some way. But what we could possibly do is null and say by default it is going to be null. Ah, silly keyboard. So either query or thread query. Why do you always make your own model directory then using default app? I do use app and models. I migrated it. I usually migrate it and move it when I know the architectural pattern that I want to follow once it starts being discovered a little bit. So this index controller, let's go ahead and add a constructor. Let's add a constructor like so, and inside here we're going to have a private read-only list threads as a query. So threads is going to turn into this query handle eventually, right? And what we want to do is, by default, when we, because it's an API, we always want to allow includes, right? So we're always going to allow includes, and our includes are going to be a certain thing. We're also going to allow specific filters and sorting. So we can drop that in there as well. This is how I like to use the Sparsy Query Builder package. I build up these kind of relative defaults. I say, okay, so this is typically how I want to be able to allow it. Anytime anyone's querying threads, like this list threads is, I could probably rename this actually to a thread query at this point, because then this thread query here is just a way to kind of build out my standard query. Alongside this, I want to say, okay, so let's get the latest and simple paginate it. And then all of this stuff there is just gone out the way, which means that all of this, in theory, can just be inlined, and we just let exceptions bubble up where they need to. Suddenly, it's super clean, the way I like it. There we go. So we're going to build up a thread resource collection from this query handle latest paginate. But it means that we can also do, because I'm returning an eloquent builder, I can do a where, or if it was searchable, I could, tap into that. But yeah, this thread query, this is how my default querying happens. So currently we'll do that as well. So on a thread, you can do all of this. This is probably no longer needed. This thread factory stuff is probably no longer needed. What I might do is a public, it feels like I'm making a fat model doing that. I'll think about that. I'll think about this part. But there's that one. Store controller is now using a command. Like so. So this also could be throwable. We've got a thread there. I mean, in theory, I can do that and just shrink it up. all nice and clean, all simple. So that's all we've got so far is commands, queries, data objects. And then we're going to have these events, right? And these events are domain events. At the minute, they are very Laravel focused. Thread was created, you know, with serializing a model, with broadcasting on a certain channel. Relatively standard stuff. But what I want to be doing here is, you know, we're going to be event sourcing, I think, because you want to be able to track activity, track what's been done, go back over things, and rebuild should something happen, right? And typically I would lean on Sparsy's Laravel event sourcing for this. So we will say composer require Sparsy Laravel event sourcing. Now we can just go to, remind me later. Here we go. Laravel event sourcing. And obviously we've got commands down there, but that's not what we want. We want installation and setup. So we need this. Let's go check that migration out, make sure there's no changes that are needed. Aggregate, lots of stuff. We're just going to fix up that whole file and make that static. And then this one, snapshots, it's all good. I don't think we're going to defer from anything out of the box in this one, so we can just quickly migrate. Then we can publish. So publish that, fantastic. And then we got all of this stuff all done and working and everyone's happy. So we've got projectors and reactors and aggregates and all of these magical things that some people know, some people don't. So I'm going to walk through setting up my first aggregate. So we're going to have a posting aggregate. So here we go. So directory aggregates like this. And then this is going to be our thread aggregate. This is going to extend the aggregate root like that. So public function, and if we go down to creating your first aggregate, we want to, so create account, add money. They're all very action based. So create thread. And this is going to get a new thread as a thread. Now this has all of the information that it actually needs already. And this is going to return the thread aggregate. So we can say this, record that, something happened, return this. And this domain event here is going to be whatever it is we need to call it. So inside here, we want to say record that a thread was created. This, I'm pretty sure it's extending should be stored. And what we're also going to want is implements should broadcast as well. No, we don't want that. We don't want that. Don't want that. No, Steve. You're overthinking it. Should be stored. Okay, so this event is thinking in events. Where's our events? Recording events, blah, blah, blah. Using projectors to transform events. Projector. Should be stored, and then it's literally just got attributes in it. So thread was created. So this thread was created here. So new thread was created, and then the thread that was created is that thread there. All ties together. So up here we can say public function construct. We'll just say public read-only new thread as thread. That's all tied up. That's all tied up. Fantastic. Everything's all linking together. So then what happens is that we need to kind of react to that. Broadcast it. I want to steal all the data. So next up, we are going to have handlers. These handlers are going to be like a thread handler. This is how we handle threads. Extends, I think it's projectionist, or here we go. Creating your first projector. Where is it? Here we go. Extends projector. Projector, like that. So this needs to have a public function on thread was created. Thread was created as an event. I believe that returns void. So what do we do when this thread is created? This triggers that. That does something. So on account created, we create an account. At this point, we can just go to the command and say, you know, create a new thread. The tricky part is when we've got this database manager here. So when it comes to event sourcing, I think something like a service class might be a little bit more repositories, maybe. Yeah, we're going to create repositories, stuff it. Repositories. Right, okay, so we are going to have a it depends how strict you want to be, right? Because if you want to go through DDD, everything should have an interface and bounds and container, so you can resolve the implementation from the abstraction. So you say, okay, so pull in the thread repository, which is going to resolve the eloquent thread repository in case you want to change to something other than eloquent. But I'm not going to change to anything other than eloquent. So I'm just going to do it the kind of the simpler way. So here's that thread repository. So public function construct like so. And this is going to have that private read-only database manager. We're just going to say database on that. So we're going to have a public function create. Now this is going to get that new thread passed to it, much like this does here. So then all this needs to do is thread to array. This is going to return a thread, and this needs to make sure that it could be throwable. And there we go. That command is now no longer needed. So this create new thread, thread handler, and up here we can say public function construct, and we can pull in the repository. Or yeah, so private read-only threads repository done. So we can just say this repository create, the thread is the event thread. Obviously exceptions bubble. So that's going to go over to here. This is then going to go to this, and this is going to do all what it needs to do. Everything's kind of lining up at this point. So what it needs at this point is a providers, and this is going to have a domain service provider, which extends a service provider from Laravel. Then in that boot method, we are going to say we're going to add a projector, and we are going to go for the thread handler class. So as long as this is working, all should be good. So in our app service provider down here, we can say this boot app, this boot domains. So public we can just make this private function boot app, going to return void, and then we can move this down here. Private function boot domains. Do I want to boot? No, I want to register, don't I? So not boot domains. So public function, when we are registering yeah, I see. I know what you mean, Ollie. You know, extra scaffolding can be a nightmare. Once the setup is done, it's so much quicker to get stuff done, because you just go, okay, add an event, add how I'm going to handle it, sit back, it's done. It's all of this setup stuff. That's what makes DTD feel slow to start with, because you've got so much to set up. I'm going to say this register domains like that. So down here, we can say private function register domains, return void. Then this app register. This is a provider, and we're going to go for that domain service provider from there. This one from there. Grab that one, and what we'll do is we're just going to say that domains done. There we go. Oh, I never remember the shortcuts. My fingers just kind of go with it, and I'm like, oh, there we go. Done. So we've registered the posting domain service provider, and then the next one would be like, you know, this app register domains identity providers, blah 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 blah. That way I only got to pull in that top level. There might be a nicer way to do it, like pulling in just providers here, but it's working. It's working. So let's just make sure composer du-o. And what I want to do, let's just go open up herd a second, and let's go to our table plus. Stored events, nothing in it. So if we come back to the beginning of the chain, which is HTTP controllers threads store, this is currently doing the command handle, but what we want it to do is use the aggregate, isn't it? Which means that what we want to return is going to be different. This command doesn't want to be used anymore. This create new thread command is no longer used. We are going to use something else, basically. So we want to get that thread aggregate, retrieve wherever UUID is just going to be string UUID, time-based to string. And then we want to say, we want to create a thread. No. Yes, create a thread, where the thread is a new thread. So request payload, where that user is this user ID, like that. So that command is now no longer needed. So what we're going to do is going to remove that for now. Remove that. That can go. That can go. So what we actually want this to be is HTTP accepted. So this is how you kind of do it synchronously, right? Thread aggregate, create thread, persist. But in reality, what you're really going to do at this point is go, okay, so I want to create a thread. The next time, if you've got an optimistic UI, what you're going to do is you're going to store that local state and update it when you next do a fetch request to get the index, right? So this needs to be a job at this point. So we're going to have some jobs, and that's going to handle other stuff. So let's make a job. This is application code at this point. So we're going to have threads, and we're going to have a create new thread. So threads, create new thread. Within here, we are going to have create thread, this new thread here. So public read-only new thread as payload. So that's that, like so. That'll do all of that stuff. Then this can just be dropped into there. Then this can just be this payload. That should have the user on it. Like so. So store request, yes. That's got all of that. So our controller can now have the dispatcher, contract bus, like so. And if we want to make this, in the background, we can say this bus dispatch. The command that is new create new thread. Is it this one? Create new thread. That's a command, isn't it? Create new thread job. We can remove that command in a second, where the payload is request payload, passing in this user ID. Excellent. So there's that thread aggregate gone, and that is out of the way. That is all just going to happen, and this has been accepted. This is just a standard JSON response at this point, saying message, we are processing your request to create a new thread. Simple symbols. Icon set. I think it might be Capuchin. Yeah, Capuchin icons. It's my go-to theme and icon set for all things. Right, so that is going to dispatch. That is then going to do that. Then this create new thread there. This, let's do a quick find usages. not being used anymore. So this can just be deleted, safely deleted. So this is the only create a new thread class. So this is going to do that. So if we open this up, what we're going to do is let's just there's a dump auto load, and then we'll run composer dev and see what happens when we do it. So far so good. Nothing in our stored events, but we're going to want to check those in a mo. Let's move that over here, and we are processing the request. 202 accepted. Aggregate version, event class, thread was created. Here's a body for that user. And then in our threads, okay, so it's probably going to be easier if I migrate fresh and seed, then composer dev, come over to login, grab my token because now my database is going to be clear. Get all threads, no threads, create a thread. That's being processed. Then the next time we fetch it, it should be there. In theory, threads. This is a thread for funsies. Get all threads. There it is. 8 seconds ago. No meta information for the right user. All good, right? We can say include user. Got the user. Sweet. Working well. And then we've got obviously our stored events, event version. You can obviously be very specific with this naming here. So you can actually add a naming map for your event classes, which I like to do. Aliases for stored event classes. Here we go. Event class map. Here it is. Let's go to this config event sourcing and go down to here. Yes, I want to use it. No, I don't want to enforce it. I just want to use it if it's registered. So thread created. That thread was created. So, I mean, should I do thread created or should I do like thread dot created at this point? Let's go back and do a quick. I want to look at the event sourcing commands. Let's see what happens if we replay. Event sourcing replay. So let's just done. Threads we've now duplicated. So now if we just a tinker like so, app models thread truncate. Replay, yes. There it is. Stored events, there's the event. There's that, we're good. So, what I want to do is, we are going to truncate both of these. And we are going to create a new thread again. Bam. That is doing all of that stuff, processing the thread. Then over on threads, that thread appears. Stored events. Event class. Let's get in the wrong one. What is going on here? Hosting events thread was created. No, that is correct, isn't it? That is correct. Because it's not this one. It should be the other one. It should be that one. Simplify that. Shouldn't be this one. Should not be that one. Okay, so we've got some juggling to do here. So let's go through and hit our aggregate. We called that thread was created. Cool. Let's migrate fresh in seed and start that again. See what's gone on. Suppose a dev. Go ahead and log in. Reset our token. Get all threads. They are empty. Create a new thread. Awesome. So stored events, thread.create. Fantastic. So now when we're doing queries, all we got to do is say thread.created instead of full class name stuff. It's a little bit cleaner when you're like wanting to do more in-depth querying stuff. So process, we've got this one dispatching there. Then we're also dispatching that one, and we're also dispatching, we're running 3 different things. So what can we do to make this a little bit nicer? Because this is obviously, there's going to be a point where, you know, maybe threads are being created quite rapidly, and we don't want, this is, you know, relatively non-blocking, but we can make it more non-blocking, right? So we can actually defer callback of dispatching this. We can actually give this a name, and we can say create new thread, something like that. Let's copy that. And we are going to use that function. So use function that. So now, if we go over here, give ourselves some kind of vertical space here, send that, and then it does it. So it returns that response, and then it kicks off that process. So we're just delaying everything until our API has responded at this point, because what's happening is we're dispatching to the background, a background job, but we're deferring dispatching to the background until we've sent that response. Then we're dispatching the job. The job then stores the event. Once that event has been stored, it's actually triggering that event being handled to then create the thread. So it's like fanning out a little bit. And then once that's been created, it's emitting a real-time notification and emitting the processing thread's job to, you know, start pulling that content apart and pulling out any URLs later on. So we have started DDD in less than an hour, and yeah, there's a few steps. So let's go on to I don't know, some next bit of the domain to see what we can do, because this thread was created. I kind of want to rename this to something non-matching, like created thread. We're going to call this created thread. Create new thread, blah, blah, blah. And then down here in events, thread was created. Perfect. Aggregate, thread was created. Inside of our handlers, on thread was created. Perfect. Everything is lining up. Now you can do like aggregate partials. You can do various other things like that, but you know, we will stick with that. So a thread was created, which is awesome. Get threads. We've got some threads going on here, so we're just not going to include that for now. We're going to also remove that. So we've got a couple of threads. few threads, all same one, and you want to be able to react to them, and which means you've got to be able to view them. So let's come down to our roots into API, threads. So far we can get and we can store, but we also want to be able to view, right? So root get thread name show. So inside here we want a show controller. Show controller. This is going to have a public function invoke. We're going to get that request. We're going to return a response. This is where we want to get the thread and return it as a resource. So we want to return a new JSON response at this point, where the data is going to be a new thread resource, and the resource is going to be whatever it is. So this is currently just passing through using root model binding, which is fine, but I'm not sure. I don't like root model binding when it comes to an API. So we're going to just add like a ULID in there, because that's what we're passing technically. And we're going to have a string for the ULID, which means we can then query the thread by ULID. And obviously, if not found, return a 404. So remove that. We don't care about that now. So there's that. Not really needed, but I like declarativeness. So what we can do is we've actually got our query up here. So public function, we're going to go to the constructor like this. And inside here, we're going to have a private read only. And we're going to use the query, which is the thread query. There we go. And this query accepts a builder, allows us to do all sorts of things. So we can then say this query handle like that. This can then be our thread. So far, it's not going to do what we need it to do. So we want to do all of that. And then we want to say first or fail. First or fail. That. Was it find or fail? Find or fail, where the ID is the ULID passed in, like that. There we go. There we go. Finally got there. So thread, this query handle, find or fail, which means that it will throw a model not found exception if need be, which is a 404, gives us a thread. We do that. All is good. So over here, we can just go ahead and use that show controller. But we will instead do this. So we can say threads, threads, threads. There we go. Only pull in the one namespace at this point. ULID, let's just save ULID to dictionary quickly. So we don't need to pass a builder in, we can if we want to. And then find or fail on that one to return this. That is all linked up. So if I grab this here and say, okay, let's just quickly duplicate this. And we are going to rename this one to fetch a thread. And then we are going to do that. Bam, got it. So at this point, we are getting the single thread that we need. Obviously, params, we can say include user, and that's doing its business. From there, what we want to do, what do we want to do? Like, we want to be doing views as well, right? So if we come down to our thread migration in a second, we got reactions, but we don't have views. Now that would be pretty cool, right? So let's say table unsigned big integer views default 0, comment that on how many times this thread has been viewed. And that's like not in a, you know, oh, look, it's in my timeline. It's in this, you know, list. It's how many times it's been specifically fetched. So we can come over to our factory for the thread. And let's say that we're just going to kind of duplicate this part here. We want this. Views. Like that. So on thread, we're also going to have views. Property int views up there. Use integer like so. Okay, so that's that's cool. Then what we want to do at this point is let's migrate fresh and seed. Cool. Then we are going to what's going to be the best way to do this? Like this show controller, I feel like I need to, you know, dispatch a background job to say, you know, okay, we got a thread, we're going to return that response, and here, defer dispatching a thread was viewed event. Or do we just, you know, defer calling the aggregate to increment the view count? Yeah. Do we need to dispatch a job when we can just defer doing the work? I don't think it's not business critical. So I think deferring calling the aggregate is probably the better option here. So we can say defer. Use function like that. Then the callback can be thread aggregate. Retrieve UUID is UID7 to string. And this is where we need to do some work. So public function view thread string ID. This is like simply stuff. So this is a thread, and we're going to want to, you know, say which user it was, I guess, aren't we? So view thread, and the thread is the thread ID. And the user is, I suppose we could do something like that. That kind of makes sense. Persist. Fix all that up. There we go, we're getting there. We can just fix this up by saying thread there. This thread aggregate then needs to have a new event. So down in our domain, thread was viewed. Extends should be stored. Then in our constructor, we have a public read-only string for the thread and a read-only string for the user. So this user and this thread. So we can say this, record that the domain event is new thread was viewed. The thread was that, and that is that. Turn this. Cool. So anytime a thread's viewed, it's going to record that a thread was viewed. On top of that, what we need to do is come over to the thread handler and say public function on thread was viewed. This is going to get that thread was viewed event. And then we are going to say, we're just going to pass the event through, make it easier, like that. This repository, public function increase view count for string thread ID void return this database transaction. Callback is going to be thread query where the column ID operator is equals to and the value is thread ID. We want to increment the column views. Whoa, that's not a void. Now, increment is going to return an int at this point, so we can just do that. So after that callback, we can say, okay, attempt to do it 3 times, for example. So we are attempting to increment the thread count on a specific thread. Obviously, the thread itself doesn't care about the user ID, but the event does. So let's come back to here and let's go to the thread resource, content, reactions, and we'll go to views as well. So this resource views. So again, because we've reset everything, we're going to have to log in. Login environment over here. Let's just go drop that in. Get all threads. We don't have one. Create a new thread. Perfect. Is that running? No, wait a minute. Queue worker needs to be running. There we go. Now we can get them listed. Like 0 views currently. And if we come to stored events, thread created. So what we want to do is before we do that, is come to our config again and to our event sourcing, and we can say thread.viewed. Thread was viewed. There we go. So now if we click on fetch a thread, so if we just go and grab that ID, send that over here, thread viewed on our threads. It's not showing up because I haven't actually haven't done what I needed to do. Oh. There we go. Let's go ahead and make sure that Threads has got views for migration. Yep. Why is that not showing up? The actions and user ID. Let's come and reopen that. There we go, we've got views again. Okay, so now if we go ahead and log in, grab our token over here, make sure we are getting the user, all good, get all threads, nothing there, create a thread, there it is. Make sure composer dev is running. So then if we get all threads, we should have a thread that we can go ahead and view. So if we come over to here, thread views is 0, fetch a thread. We should then see a, thread repo, something's going on with the thread repo. Oh, wait a minute, thread handler. Increase view count. And the thread ID is event thread. Here we go, here we go. Okay, so what we can do to fix that is truncate this. That stored event should still be in there, which means that I can just do the a event. Where's the event sourcing one? There's got to be a shortcut to do this. There we go. Replay those events. So there's threads. Views hasn't gone up. So maybe this increment might not be the correct way to do it. Maybe we just actually need to do an update. I mean, I don't get why increment wouldn't work. Column views. Not sure. Something to dig into, definitely. That's definitely being called. It's definitely being stored. Thread was viewed is definitely being stored, so that should then be increased the view count for that thread. Yeah, something's happening that I'm just not 100% sure on. It's a nicer way to do it. It's got to be a nicer way to do it. Am I missing something? Am I missing something? Definitely got views. Views in there. Is there a reason increment wouldn't work on this? I mean, the problem that I'm going to see here is that there could be potential race conditions. So maybe a better approach is needed. Not sure. I'll have to have a think on that one, because I can see a couple of potential problems of race conditions and other things happening, but overall it does work. It would work. Reason it's not working is I can't bloody tell you. But hey, that is what happens. So let's create a new thread, and in this process new thread here, I'm going to want to move that to there. What we're going to want to do is, when we want to process the threads, we want to pass the thread body content so if it's in Markdown, we need to make a decision here. Is it going to accept Markdown, or is it not going to accept Markdown? I think this is a tricky one. I mean, we're going to want to kind of strip and validate and do stuff with the content anyway. Pass the thread body content, extract any links for each link, unfurl it and save it to meta links, like that. That's kind of roughly what we're going to want to do, right? So at this point, how could we do this? Do we build a parser? Do we just do some inline string manipulation-y stuff? Because we still want to display the link, but we also want to like pull out some meta information so you can, because this is API only. If you're integrating with this and you want to pull down a feed, and that feed item has got a link in it that's been unfurled, you can then choose to display it how you want. That's kind of the beauty of it at this point. So maybe we'll go like links is, or maybe we need some regex here. Regex match for URLs in thread body content. So we can, URLs, we can start an array. Actually, I'll probably just do that as a new collection. So then here we go, URLs. Okay, this needs to be an array. This here. This bit. Let's do some GitHub Copilot. Ooh, okay. Don't use GPT-4. Let's test out some Sonnet 4. And let's say, let's match all URLs that are HTTP or HTTPS. I'm terrible with regex at this point. There might be a simple, oh my God. That just, look, okay, so it's matching. That looks terrible. Isn't there a nicer way? Because that's just matching characters, right? Okay. Which one is faster or more performant? Because I'm not sure on string matching which is the most effective way. Like that. Simplest regex. Slowest. Simple regex. Can we make the S in HTTPS optional? Oh, okay, cool. Just shows me what I know about regex. I do not know enough regex. I am not one of these regex whisperers. There we go. This is going to complain and say the \S. This is going to complain now. Okay, so down here we can then go for each URLs as URL, and we're going to add a private function for now called unfurl, where we're going to get a string and URL, and we want to return some form of array thing back. We'll just do that for now. So down here, we want to basically return something like that, right? So we want to get, is there like a get meta tags? Stream get meta tags. One of these two is the right way to do it. PHP stream get meta tags. Get metadata. So timeout blocked wrapper data. Get meta tags. It'll pass all of the meta tags basically. All the keywords, blah, blah, blah. Okay, return get meta tags. The file name is this URL. And return an array of whatever is available, basically. So what we could probably do is unfurled data like that, maybe. So we get URL itself, and then we just go boff. That's everything that we could get. Use it as you wish. Then at the end of this, we can say this thread save. Okay. So let's create a new thread. Check this out. HTTPS. This is obviously my website. Send accepted. Let's go watch the jobs going on. Compose a dev. Let's see what happens. Process thread. Unknown modifier. Can I retry that job now? I should be able to. AQ failed. Process new thread. I think it was that one. AQ retry that. What is this? Indirect modification of overloaded property model thread meta has no something. So let's open up that Laravel log. Scroll to the bottom till we find what we need. Oh, so many errors. Oh, I've been a bad Steve. Indirect modification of overloaded property. Okay. Let's have a think. What can we do? So what we want is if we just go look at the thread model a minute. What is meta as array object? So if we go have a look at array object, again, this is an array object. We want to append at this point, right? Key links value URL is URL and filled data. Oh, okay. Nope. Not that. All that. So append is one option. Is it like a merge? Append the value, that's fine. We'll stick with it. Call to okay, because it is going to be null. Meta. So meta is equal to this thread meta or new array object. In case it gets set because it's don't know, got something in it. Okay, so retry that. Now try it again. Ah, bugger you. Okay. Meta append. This thread update meta like that. There we go. Right. Links URL. Okay, so now if let's go and get Tinker, app, models, thread. Let's get the first one. That doesn't have anything, so let's latest, first, meta. Bang. Meta. Links. That's an array, so I can say links. Yeah. Okay, so it's stored in 0. Oh no, that's terrible. That's not what I want. I mean, it's got some stuff on it, so I can actually work with it, but ugh. You have to look at how I store this. I've got to standardize. That's just not quite what I'm going to look for, is it? I need to be able to get some sort of image. Okay, so we will come back to that one. That's an hour and a half. I think that's probably good enough for now for refactoring. So git status, we're going to git add, git commit, sure, refactor to DDD and add event sourcing. So that is that. I'm just going to open the README a second. Let's add a to-do. Obviously, there's going to be add more tests. Come on. And what we want to do is fix processing threads to a standardized format. Yeah, that's a good start. Then once we've done that, we want to add reactions to threads. Investigate why the thread increment on views is not working, or find a better solution for race conditions. So I don't want to do like lock this column, do this, do that. It just starts to sound messy. There's got to be a nicer way to do that. But technically, as it is event sourcing, once the event has happened and the events are sequential, there shouldn't be race conditions in theory, but I don't know. There is a slim chance that it could possibly happen. After we've done that, add more endpoints for the API, and then what we want to do is generate the open API specification, and then improve the generated open API specification. There we go. Then once that's done, we can start looking at other things like following. Implement following function Let me do that. Once we've implemented that, we can create feed endpoints, aka discover feed home timeline, whatever you want to call it. I haven't figured out what it's going to be called yet, so I'm just going to say, the feed endpoint, the main one. Discover food. Yes, we need to discover food. What time is it? It is lunchtime. I'm going to go buy my wife some lunch. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm going to push that up as usual. The repository is here. If you want to contribute, if you want to drop thoughts, let me know. Git add, git commit, sure, update, readme, git push. So yeah, if you want to kind of give me any feedback or ideas, maybe I could GitHub, not Laravel, Breeze, Threadit. Could I enable discussions? Maybe if I enable discussions, then discussions. Discussions are now there. So yeah, there's nothing there yet, but there's discussions if you want to go ahead and drop thoughts on it. But there we go. We have started. All of that is in there. Also, if you come to API here, you can see all of the stuff coming back for Yak. So if you use Yak and just open this folder, it should all work. You just need to set the environment variables and you're good. But yeah, thank you for tuning in. Stay awesome. And I will definitely be catching you again, probably next week now. Let me know what you want me to do next with Threadit. I definitely think there's a lot we can do with it. I'd like to get this deployed at some point as well, because that would be really cool. Definitely think it'll be really fun to work with. Can you imagine like using raycasts and just being like, okay, Threadit and get timeline, or Threadit, post a new thought, and then you can go view it somewhere else. And yeah, really cool. API focused social networking at its best. Thank you all for tuning in. Stay awesome, stay happy, stay fed, discover food. Catch you next time.